In tonight's headlines, the government is to issue retail bonds worth $70 billion, according to sources. Former Foreign Minister Qin Gang steps down from the National People's Congress 1 week before its annual session. And French President Emmanuel Macron says sending ground forces to Ukraine cannot be ruled out.
The government is tipped to announce $70 billion worth of retail bonds when Financial Secretary Paul Chan releases his budget tomorrow. Most are expected to be silver bonds for the elderly, while the rest are green and infrastructure bonds. Sources said the government is following up on last year when its bond issues were oversubscribed, given the public's appetite for low-risk investment products with stable returns. In the budget speech last year, Chan offered $50 billion worth of silver bonds and $15 billion worth of green bonds. But because of the huge demand, the government increased the total amount by $10 billion to $75 billion. Vera Yun, who lectures in economics at the University of Hong Kong, believes that the government is aiming to offset a weak stock market.
The purpose of it is to help the development of bond market and to fulfill different policy goals, such as, to allow middle class, elderly who have some savings to have stable return for their retirement life. And green bonds for supporting green projects. Hong Kong, as an international financial center, has been short in developing its bond market. It has not been as flourishing as, say, for example, the U.S. Treasury bonds.
Yun said issuing bonds to restore fiscal balance wasn't necessary because from an international perspective, the Hong Kong government is financially healthy. Its fiscal reserves last year stood at over $800 billion, but a budget deficit of around $100 billion is expected. Maisie Mock, Cable News.
China's point man on the SAR began the last full day of his visit to the city by dropping in at the Hong Kong Palace Museum in the West Kowloon Cultural District. Xia Baolong, who heads the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, was accompanied by Chief Executive John Lee and Culture Minister Kevin Yeung. Xia spent 3 hours touring the museum and had lunch with teenagers and students from tertiary institutions. A University of Hong Kong student who was present said Xia encouraged them to improve themselves. The Beijing official was also interested in learning about the hobbies of teenagers. After meeting economists later in the afternoon, Xia visited the Office for Safeguarding National Security in Causeway Bay and ended the day with a banquet in North Point. He will leave Hong Kong tomorrow at the end of a 7-day trip to study the city's financial and economic development. Janice Yu, Cable News.
The Law Society has commented on the Article 23 National Security Law on the eve of the expiry of a month-long consultation period. The solicitors group said it is necessary to enact Article 23, but the government has to clarify several offenses, such as the theft of state secrets. It urged officials to look at the Canadian law on government secrets.
The Canadian Act requires that the defendant establishes that the public interest in disclosure of the information outweighs the public interest in non-disclosure, and the defendant's purpose in making the disclosure is to review an offense committed by another person in their official duties. Furthermore, the defendant has to follow a series of steps of prior disclosure to authorities necessary before making the public disclosure.
Travel industry insiders have poured cold water on plans to stage fireworks and drone performances every month. They took to the airwaves this morning to argue that monthly shows are unlikely to lure more visitors, as neighboring cities such as Zhuhai have similar attractions. Leung Feng-yun, the travel industry representative of the Federation of Trade Unions, said frequent fireworks displays will lose their novelty and should be reserved for festive occasions. Lawmaker Qin Gang suggested introducing new elements to the multimedia Symphony of Lights, which has not been updated since it opened 20 years ago. Yang said instead of monthly fireworks shows, which are expensive, the government should plan new tourist spots and more activities.
The ICAC has charged another 9 indigenous inhabitants from Yuen Long with conspiracy to defraud the Lands Department. The department had granted them permission to build one small house each in Shoutu Shanchun, but the homes in the village were sold to non-indigenous buyers for between $9 million and $13 million. The anti-corruption watchdog had earlier charged 2 others, including former Yuen Long District Councillor Ching Chan-ming. Ching was accused of developing small house estate projects in the village by purchasing building rights from indigenous inhabitants.
Foreign Minister Qin Gang has resigned from the National People's Congress. The NPC Standing Committee said China's shortest-serving foreign minister was not sacked or expelled. Qin had been out of public view for more than 6 months before he was suddenly removed from his post without any explanation last July, just 7 months after he was appointed. The announcement coincided with the dismissal of former Defense Chief Li Shangfu from the Central Military Commission. He was ousted as minister and state councillor in October last year. The developments come a week before the legislature holds its annual session in Beijing.
France has raised the stakes as the war in Ukraine entered its 3rd year. At a meeting of European leaders in Paris, French President Emmanuel Macron said sending Western ground troops to Ukraine cannot be ruled out. He admitted there's no consensus to do so, but pledged that the West will do everything to stop Russia from winning the war. Ukraine depends on the United States and its allies for weapons, and complained that it hasn't been able to push back the Russians because supplies have been slow to arrive.
I think there was a great sense of urgency, particularly for the short term, on ammunition and on air defense. And particularly on ammunition, there is this great Czech initiative, which is buying worldwide ammunition and shells for Ukraine. Ukraine is in urgent need for more rockets, but also for more systems, be it SS-200, SS-300, Patriots and other systems.
Hungry Palestinian women and children lined up outside a bakery in the southern Gaza city of Rafah amid a severe shortage of food. I have to wait for 3 hours to buy bread, said Sharouk Shanan, who lost her home when Israel began attacking Gaza in October and now shares a flimsy tent with 8 other families. The situation could worsen as Israel threatens a ground offensive in Rafah, which is bursting at the seams as it shelters 1.5 million Palestinians displaced from many places in Gaza. In the north, people waited anxiously for 8 trucks to arrive. Relief agencies accuse the Israeli military of refusing to facilitate deliveries. Israel denied the claim. I wish death for my children because I cannot feed them, cried Naim Abu Saido. What did we do to deserve this? The Jordanian military has dropped food in 4 air missions over Gaza, where desperate Palestinians are praying for a truce.
Well, I hope by the beginning of the weekend, the end of the weekend. At least my national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're close. It's not done yet. And my hope is by next Monday, we'll have a ceasefire.
As truce talks continued, an Israeli airstrike in Rafah hit a residential building where several families had sought refuge. The number of women and children were among the latest casualties as the Palestinian death toll in Gaza approached 30,000. Sachin Katwi, Cable News.
Home prices in Hong Kong have sunk to their lowest level in 7.5 years. The official private domestic price index last month was down 1.6% from December. It was the 9th monthly decline in a row in a sluggish property sector hit by weak market sentiment and high interest rates. The index has slumped 20% since hitting its peak in 2021. Prospective buyers are waiting to see if stamp duties will be cut when the budget is announced tomorrow. Some analysts expect homes in the world's most expensive property market to keep sliding this year.